Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. It started with a flickering light in the hallway, something so small, so mundane, and yet it set everything in motion. I'd been putting off fixing it for days, maybe even weeks if I'm honest. One of those tasks that never feels urgent until you catch yourself squinting in your own home. I could have called someone, a handyman, or even tried to fix it myself. But when I mentioned it during the call with my friend Denise, she offered, "Why don't you have Matt come by? He's good with that sort of thing." Matt, her son. I remembered him as a teenager, lanky, quiet, always polite with that boyish shyness that made him endearing. I hadn't seen him much in recent years. Life, as it does, sent us in different directions. Denise told me he was back in town, working remotely for some tech company now. "He'll be glad to help," she insisted. So I agreed, not thinking much of it. I expected him to stop by, fix the bulb, and be gone within minutes. When he rang the doorbell that Thursday afternoon, I opened the door and blinked at the man standing there. He wasn't the skinny teenager I remembered. He was taller, broader, and carried himself with a quiet kind of confidence. He had his mother's warm eyes, though, and when he smiled, I saw a flicker of the boy I once knew. "Hey, Mrs. Alden," he said with a half-smile. "Oh, please," I laughed, waving him in. "It's been years. Just call me Caroline." He stepped inside, looking around the foyer like it held memories, which, for him, I suppose it did. He had visited many times when Denise and I used to spend afternoons sipping wine and venting about our husbands, who were always too busy or too tired to listen. Matt got straight to work with a small toolkit he brought. I followed him into the hallway, watching as he pulled over a chair and unscrewed the light fixture. His sleeves rolled up to the elbow revealed strong, veined forearms. I found myself looking a little longer than I should have, then catching myself. We chatted lightly as he worked, about Denise, about the new job he had, how things had changed. The bulb was replaced in under 10 minutes, but Matt didn't rush to leave. He lingered in the hallway, then followed me into the kitchen when I offered coffee. I hadn't expected to feel so comfortable. He sat across from me at the breakfast nook, fingers curled around the mug, his eyes moving gently over the room. "This place hasn't changed at all," he said. "No, I suppose I'm not one for change," I replied, half laughing. He looked at me for a moment, his gaze lingering longer than it should have. "I like that about you." There was a pause. Not awkward, just noticeable. Something unspoken passing between us. I brushed it off with a smile and offered cookies, homemade from a batch I'd made the day before. We talked for nearly an hour. The conversation deepened gradually. Childhood memories, his father's passing, the way Denise had held the family together. He asked me about my late husband, and I spoke more openly than I had in years. "He was a good man," I said, stirring my coffee. But there were silences between us, things we never said. Matt nodded, thoughtful. Sometimes silence can be the loudest thing in a room. That struck me. He was young, at least compared to me, 30, maybe 32, but he spoke with a maturity that surprised me. I walked him to the door eventually, feeling that familiar hesitation of not wanting the moment to end. As he turned to go, he said, "Let me know if there's anything else I can help with." "I might take you up on that," I said with a smile, and something in his expression flickered, a warmth, a curiosity, something deeper than politeness. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of anything he did or said outright, but because of how I felt. Stirred, seen, and that hadn't happened in a long time. Over the next few days, we texted. It started with a thank you message from me, followed by a question about a flickering bathroom light that I may or may not have exaggerated. He came over again that weekend. This time I had baked a fresh apple pie. He fixed the light in a matter of minutes, and we ended up in the living room, pie in hand, feet tucked under us on opposite ends of the couch. "I never realized how lonely I was," I said softly after a long, quiet moment. Matt looked at me, not with pity or surprise, but understanding. "I think a lot of people feel that way. They just don't say it out loud." And in that moment, I felt something loosen inside me. A tightness I hadn't even known was there. I wasn't looking for anything that day. Not connection. Not affection. Certainly not attention from my friend's son. But something about the way he looked at me, like I mattered, was enough to awaken something I thought had faded away. When he left that evening, he gave me a hug. Just a friendly one. But his hand lingered on my back a second longer than expected. My cheek brushed his neck, and for that fleeting second, everything felt electric. I closed the door behind him and leaned against it, my heart pounding, not from fear or guilt, but something closer to anticipation. I wasn't sure what was unfolding between us, but I knew it had already begun. The following Thursday, he showed up uninvited, with flowers. "Thought your kitchen needed a little color," he said, as though that explained everything. And maybe it did. Because when I took the flowers from his hand, our fingers touched again, and neither of us pulled away. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. The flowers sat in a glass pitcher on my kitchen table, sunflowers and soft pink tulips, arranged without any particular artistry, but somehow more beautiful because of that. Every time I passed by them, I smiled without meaning to. Matt had left them there a week ago, and I hadn't moved them. I didn't want to. That day when he brought them, we didn't talk much at first. He seemed a little nervous, which surprised me. There was a slight stiffness in his shoulders, the kind that shows up when someone isn't sure of the rules anymore. I offered him tea instead of coffee this time, and we sat on the back patio in the fading sunlight. The breeze played gently with the hem of my blouse, and for a while, all we heard was the rustle of the trees. I caught him glancing at me now and then, but not in a way that felt disrespectful. If anything, it felt reverent. Curious. "I wasn't sure if you'd be okay with me just showing up like that," he said, finally breaking the silence. "I wouldn't have opened the door if I wasn't," I replied. He smiled, and I saw the tension in his shoulders loosen just a bit. Good. I didn't want to overstep. "You haven't?" I said, a little too quickly. Then, softer, "You haven't at all." We sat there, teacups warm in our hands, the light growing more golden with each passing minute. He told me about a trip he took recently, hiking through the Pacific Northwest. I told him about a book I was reading, about a woman rediscovering herself later in life. He asked what I meant by rediscovering. I paused. "I think it's when you stop living for everyone else and start paying attention to who you actually are underneath all the layers." His eyes didn't leave mine. "And who are you underneath?" That question stayed with me long after the sun dipped below the horizon. I didn't answer him that day. Maybe because I didn't know, or maybe because part of me was afraid of what I might say. The following weekend, Denise called. She was cheerful as ever, talking about her garden, about her new neighbor's ridiculous wind chimes. She mentioned Matt briefly, how she was happy to have him around for a while. "He seems lighter lately," she said. "More grounded." I said nothing. My chest tightened. I felt like I was holding a secret, even though technically there was nothing to hide. Nothing had happened. But something was happening. Matt came by again a few days later, this time to help me move a small cabinet in the living room. I could have waited for a delivery service or struggled with it myself. But I had texted him. "Are you busy?" I asked. He wasn't. He arrived in jeans and a soft gray t-shirt, his sleeves hugging his arms just right. I told myself it wasn't for me, but something about the way he greeted me, casual but warm, made me feel otherwise. We moved the cabinet easily enough, but we didn't stop there. We rearranged the whole living room. The couch shifted to the window, the rug rotated, and we ended up laughing like children trying to make a fort. It felt easy, uncomplicated. Later, as we stood together surveying our new layout, our shoulders brushed. I turned to say something. What? I don't even remember, and found him already looking at me. There was a pause. A long, aching, fragile pause. He took a breath. Caroline. I didn't move. I didn't look away. His hand touched mine, just barely at first, like asking a question without words. I let it stay. Let him feel the warmth of my skin. My heart raced, but I didn't pull away. We stood there for what felt like minutes, our hands resting together like they had every right to. He didn't lean in. He didn't force the moment. He just stayed. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he whispered. "You haven't," I said, echoing myself. His fingers gently curled around mine, and it was the tenderness of that gesture that undid me. Not a grand move, just that quiet, intentional closeness. I felt something deep inside shift, like a door opening inward that I hadn't touched in years. But I pulled away gently, not out of fear, out of awareness. We were standing in my living room in the afternoon light, with the scent of flowers between us. "It's a lot," I said quietly. He nodded, stepping back, giving me space. "I know. I know," I interrupted. We didn't speak much after that. He left not long after, with a smile that carried no pressure, only understanding. That night, I sat in my armchair, staring out the window. My thoughts weren't racing, they were floating, drifting between years, between versions of myself I'd long ignored. I thought about what it meant to be desired, to be seen not as someone's mother's friend or someone's widow, but as a woman, a whole woman. I hadn't expected to feel that again. The next morning, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find a small box sitting on my welcome mat. Inside was a book, The Woman Who Remembered Herself. A note tucked inside the cover read, "You made me think about this again. I hope you like it." No signature. No name. Just that. I traced the letters with my fingers, smiling softly. Something had begun, and not just with him. Something had begun inside me. The book sat beside my bed for 2 days before I opened it. I'd touch the cover now and then, running my fingers over the smooth edges, feeling something quiet and tender each time I did. When I finally began reading, I lost myself in its pages, in the story of a woman who had done everything right in life, followed the rules, loved loyally, sacrificed willingly, and then one day found herself wondering who she really was. The story felt like it had been written for me. Matt didn't text that week. Neither did I, but the silence between us wasn't cold. It was like a pause. Deliberate, necessary, respectful. I could feel his presence even without his words, like the memory of a song that lingered long after it stopped playing. It was a rainy Thursday when I saw him again. The sky was heavy, the windows speckled with droplets, and the house felt smaller somehow, like it wanted company. I was in the middle of folding laundry when there was a soft knock on the door. I didn't need to ask who it was. He stood there, hair damp, a plastic grocery bag in one hand and a hesitant smile on his face. "I brought soup," he said. "Figured rainy days called for it." I stepped aside without a word and let him in. We ate at the kitchen table, the soup hot and rich, the silence warm rather than awkward. Outside, the rain tapped steadily on the windows. I watched the way he moved, deliberate, unhurried, gentle. There was nothing hurried or reckless about him. He didn't look at me like a boy with a crush. He looked at me like a man who respected time. His, mine, and whatever was unfolding between us. "I've been thinking about our last conversation," he said finally, his spoon resting in his bowl. "So have I." He waited, his eyes searching mine. "Do you regret it?" "No," I said softly, "but I've thought a lot about what it meant. And what it didn't mean. I don't want to confuse comfort with something else." He nodded slowly. "That makes sense." "But," I added, and this made his eyes lift to mine again, "comfort isn't a bad place to begin, as long as we're honest." Matt reached across the table, his hand covering mine. Not in a bold way, but in a way that felt familiar now. Steady. Present. "I'm not here for confusion," he said. "I'm not looking to rescue anyone or complicate anything. I just like being around you. You make me think. You make me feel calm, real, and I haven't felt that way in a long time." The rain outside softened. I could feel its rhythm shift, like a heartbeat slowing. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit before. "I've missed being looked at like that," I whispered. Matt didn't speak. He didn't need to. His gaze said enough, quiet, unwavering, full of respect and something deeper I couldn't quite name yet. After dinner, we moved to the living room, the lights dimmed, a blanket draped over my lap. He sat close, not touching, but near enough that I could feel his warmth. We talked about books, about memories, about things we feared and things we still hoped for. I told him about the time I nearly ran away at 24, packed my bags, and stood at the bus station for 3 hours before changing my mind. "Why didn't you go?" he asked. "I thought it would be braver to stay," I answered. He smiled gently. "And do you still think that?" I thought about it. Some days. A pause stretched between us. Then softly he said, "I think staying is brave, but so is changing." It felt like he was speaking to something deeper inside me. And in that silence, I leaned my head gently against his shoulder. He didn't flinch. He didn't move. His hand rested on mine again, this time staying there. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to rest in someone else's quiet. We didn't kiss. We didn't cross any line that night. But when he stood to leave and turned toward me in the soft glow of the hallway light, there was something in his eyes. An invitation, yes, but not a demand. He kissed my hand. That small, simple gesture was more intimate than anything I'd experienced in years. As I closed the door behind him, I stood for a long while, hand resting over my heart. I wasn't falling in love. At least, not yet. But I was beginning to feel alive again. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. The days that followed were quiet, but not empty. I found myself humming in the mornings, pausing longer at the mirror, noticing the way my blouse hugged my shoulders or how a bit of lipstick softened my face. These weren't things I used to do. Not recently, anyway. Not since my husband passed, and certainly not since the days began blending into one another like pages from a worn calendar. Matt wasn't around constantly. He'd send a message every couple of days, something light, something thoughtful. A photo of a coffee mug and a rain-slicked window, a note saying he passed by the bookstore and saw something that reminded him of me. There was no pressure, no expectation. One morning, I found a small package at my doorstep. Inside was a vintage bookmark made of soft, worn leather. It smelled faintly of cedar and thyme. Tucked underneath it was a note, handwritten in his precise, careful script, for the chapters we haven't read yet. That afternoon, I invited him for dinner. It wasn't anything extravagant: grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, a bottle of wine I'd been saving for no particular reason. But I set the table with the cloth I used only when company came over. I even lit candles. When he arrived, there was a stillness to the moment. He looked at me a little longer than usual, like he was taking in something new. Or maybe something I had only just allowed him to see. "You look radiant," he said softly. I laughed, embarrassed and flattered. "It's just candlelight." "No," he replied, "it's not." We ate slowly, the conversation meandering like a gentle stream. Every word felt meaningful, even the silly ones. There was something different in the air, a kind of quiet boldness between us. We weren't pretending anymore. After we cleared the plates, I poured 2 more glasses of wine and motioned toward the couch. The room was dim, the only light coming from the candles and the street lamp outside the window, casting soft shadows on the floor. We sat close, closer than before. His thigh touched mine, but it wasn't rushed or intentional. It just was. We listened to the sound of a passing car, the ticking of the old clock on the mantel, and the slow stretch of silence that didn't feel heavy. "Do you think we're doing something wrong?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned toward me, his eyes steady. "No, I think we're doing something honest." I breathed out slowly, letting the truth of that settle over me. He touched my cheek gently, his thumb brushing just beneath my eye. The world outside could have crumbled, and I wouldn't have noticed. Not with his hand on my face, not with the way he was looking at me. And then he kissed me. Softly, slowly. It wasn't the kiss of someone testing boundaries. It was the kiss of someone who had been waiting for the right moment, the right feeling, the right permission. I responded without hesitation. The years between us disappeared. All the labels, friend's son, older woman, past and future, they melted away. What remained was just presence, just us. We didn't rush anything. Even in that closeness, there was patience, a sense of respect that wrapped around us like a blanket. I rested my head against his chest later, feeling the slow rhythm of his heartbeat beneath my ear. "I don't know where this goes," I said quietly. "You don't have to," he answered. "I'm here now, and I'm not afraid of where it might go." There were no promises, no dramatic declarations, but there was something better, something real. He stayed a while longer, holding my hand, kissing my temple, running his fingers gently through my hair as we lay side by side on the couch in a tangle of warmth and comfort. When he finally stood to leave, we didn't speak much. We didn't need to. At the door, he turned to me one last time. "You've given me more than you know, Caroline." And I knew what he meant. Not just companionship, not just attraction. I had given him a part of myself that I thought I'd buried long ago. When the door closed behind him, I didn't feel sad. I felt full. Not because the story was ending, but because something honest and beautiful had begun. A connection that had nothing to do with age or history or rules, and everything to do with timing, truth, and choosing to show up for each other. That night, I slipped the leather bookmark into the novel he had sent me, smiling as I did. There were, after all, still chapters left to read.